What would you do if the woman you married in a wheelchair stood up on your wedding night and then told you it was never about walking? The ballroom glowed under the soft shimmer of crystal chandeliers. Strings of fairy lights curled around pillars, and golden accents danced off mirrored surfaces. It looked like a scene from a high society romance novel, except this one had a twist no one in that room could ignore. At the center of the dance floor, surrounded by curious, whispering guests, stood Ethan Monroe, tall, polished, unmistakably confident in his cream-colored custom suit. In front of him, radiant in satin and lace, sat Maya Brooks, the bride, her wheelchair quietly blending into the folds of her gown. The way Ethan looked at her, though, made the entire room fade. His gaze didn't drift, didn't waver. He wasn't posing for a photo or pretending for the crowd. He was simply undeniably in awe of her. Maya's hair was swept back in soft curls, her tiara glinting under the lights. Her hands rested gently in her lap, a calm expression across her face. She looked like royalty, and she carried herself like it too. To many in the room, they didn't make sense. Ethan Monroe, a 33-year-old tech millionaire, known for gracing magazine covers and billion-dollar valuations. And Maya Brooks, 31, an outspoken disability rights advocate, a published researcher, and someone who had lived most of her adult life seated when others walked. The whispers had started long before the wedding, at galas, at fundraisers, even in private investor dinners. "Is he serious?" some asked. "She's beautiful, but, you know." Others assumed it was a publicity stunt, an awareness campaign, a statement relationship. But to Ethan, it was never about statements. It was about Maya. The way she challenged boardroom egos without raising her voice. The way she debated with facts and led with empathy. The way she laughed, dry and low, like she was letting him in on a secret only he got to hear. They had met 2 years ago at a global conference on inclusive design. He was on a panel about tech innovation. She was on one about urban accessibility. He barely remembered his own panel, but her she remembered every word. After the panel, he had reached out. Coffee turned into hours of conversation, and slowly a relationship began to form, not out of fascination, but out of deep, growing admiration. Dating, however, wasn't easy. Not for them. Strangers stared when they went out. Some assumed Ethan was her caregiver. Others assumed she was part of a savior complex narrative. Maya had seen that before. Men who saw her wheelchair first, then treated love like charity. But Ethan was different. He didn't flinch. He didn't sidestep. And most importantly, he never made the chair the center of the room. When Maya rolled up beside him, he looked at her, not the wheels. Still, not everyone was on board. Ethan's mother, Eleanor Monroe, poised, traditional woman with deep societal ties, had expressed quiet hesitation. "She seems lovely, dear," she had said during one visit. "But are you sure you're ready for the kind of life that comes with challenges?" Ethan had answered with calm certainty, "I'm not marrying a challenge, Mom. I'm marrying Maya." And now here they were, married. The reception unfolded like any other, clinking glasses, polite speeches, and a slideshow of baby photos. But underneath the celebration was an undercurrent of curiosity. People watched them more than they celebrated them. Near the back of the room, a guest whispered a little too loudly to her husband, "She's so lucky. I wonder how she landed him." Maya heard it. She didn't flinch. Instead, she turned to Ethan and whispered, "Do you think we should tell her I booked this entire hotel myself?" He laughed softly. As the night wore on, Ethan wheeled Maya to the edge of the dance floor. The band had just started playing their first dance song. Maya looked up at him, her eyes teasing. "I warned you, I don't spin." "Good thing I do," he said. He bent, gently wrapping one arm around her waist and the other beneath her knees. With practiced ease, he lifted her and they danced, not with steps, but with rhythm, swaying slowly. The room grew quiet, not out of awkwardness, but reverence. Phones stayed in pockets. Eyes softened. For the first time that evening, the room didn't see a contradiction. They saw something else. Something fuller. Something real. When the song ended, Ethan lowered her gently back into her chair. He kissed her forehead. The crowd erupted into applause, not the loud kind, but the warm kind. The kind that says, "We understand now." A little. But no one in that room, not even Ethan, knew that a quiet revelation was waiting, one Maya had carried for 2 long years. And before the night ended, everything they thought they knew about each other would change. 2 years before the wedding, Ethan Monroe walked into a packed auditorium at the Global Forum on Design and Inclusion. His keynote wasn't for another 2 hours, but he liked to observe other speakers. Most tech panels blurred together, talks about innovation, AI, smart cities. Predictable. Safe. But then she took the stage. Wearing a navy blue blazer and black slacks, Amala Brooks rolled her chair up to the podium with quiet command. The crowd leaned in. Not because of the chair, because of her voice, clear, sharp, unshaken. She didn't start with a joke or a personal anecdote like most speakers. She opened with numbers. 89% of public spaces in North America are still not fully accessible, she said. And for people with mobility impairments, that's not an inconvenience. That's a barrier to life. Her tone was measured, but firm. She cited policies, named politicians, referenced legal cases, and challenged the room of investors, architects, and executives to think beyond the elevator. At one point, a CEO from a real estate conglomerate stood to defend his record. She looked directly at him and replied, "Intentions are lovely, but impact is measurable. And your buildings still fail inspection in 4 states. The room went silent. Then it erupted in applause. Ethan didn't clap. He stared. He hadn't planned to stay for the QA, but he did. And when the session ended, he waited by the exit. Maya rolled out with her assistant, chatting casually. Ethan stepped forward. "You were brilliant," he said. She looked up at him, offered a small, polite smile. "Thank you. And you are?" he chuckled. "Ethan Monroe." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "The smart elevator guy?" He laughed. "Among other things." They shook hands. Just a handshake, but it lingered for a second longer than it needed to. Later that evening, he found her again at the networking dinner. She was sipping water, avoiding the center of attention. He walked over, asked if he could join her. "I don't usually do small talk," she said, matter of fact. "Perfect," he replied. "I hate it too." That made her laugh. One conversation turned into 5 hours. They talked about design philosophy, social media activism, family, failure, the worst coffee they'd ever had. When the servers cleared the last plates and the room emptied, they were still there. From that night on, things moved slowly. They exchanged emails, then calls, then late-night video chats. He sent her a book he thought she'd like. She challenged half of it in the margins and mailed it back. Their first date was at a quiet restaurant with a ramp he insisted on checking twice before making the reservation. When she arrived, she teased, "You didn't have to make it perfect." He smiled. "I wanted it to be easy." But it wasn't always. At the movie theater, someone asked Ethan if Maya was his sister. At brunch, a stranger complimented him for being such a good person. One night, while walking beside her as she rolled along a brick sidewalk, he said, "It's amazing how much people say out loud when they think they're whispering." Maya replied, "That's why I keep my headphones on in public, not for music, for mercy." Ethan learned quickly. Maya didn't need saving. She needed space. She didn't need help. She needed trust. He also learned she was funny, sarcastic, romantic in surprising ways, like the time she mailed him a puzzle with one piece missing and kept the last piece until their next date. You don't get the full picture without me, she said, and she learned he was gentle, quiet when needed, always observing, protective but not possessive. Still, there were doubts. Maya had been through relationships where men treated her like a project, like being with her made them good people, or like her disability was a phase they could cure with enough love and physical therapy talk. She didn't want that again, so she waited. She watched how he reacted when her wheelchair jammed. He got on the floor and fixed it without fanfare. She noticed how he made sure dinner reservations came with space, not just candles, how he never pushed, never asked invasive questions, never made her body a conversation topic. Months passed. She met his mother, Eleanor Monroe. The visit was polite but distant. Eleanor was composed, warm in the way old money can be cordial, polished, and quietly cautious. "She's impressive," Eleanor had said over dinner. Ethan didn't respond. Later, Maya said, "She doesn't think this is forever, does she?" Ethan looked her in the eye. "She'll see. In time." But Maya had her own worries. "What happens," she once asked Ethan, "when my body doesn't cooperate? When I can't fly for long? When we're older and your friends are mountain climbing and we're figuring out how to get me in the shower safely?" Ethan answered, "Then we'll hire help, or I'll carry you, or we'll skip the mountain. I'm not here for the terrain. I'm here for the journey with you." He always had a way of saying the right thing, not because he rehearsed it, but because he meant it. The first time he said, "I love you," it was at the airport curb. She was late for a flight, rushing to load her chair into the back of the car. He looked at her, flustered and radiant, and just said it. "I love you, Maya." She paused, blinked and said, "You better mean that, because I don't fall easy." "I know," he said. "That's why I waited." 2 years after that first handshake, Ethan proposed. Not with a flash mob or viral video, just a handwritten letter, slipped into a book she'd once told him was her favorite. The ring was inside a velvet pouch stitched into the back cover. Her answer was yes, not because of the ring, but because of the man. They never expected the stares to stop, but Ethan had hoped they'd at least slow down. In the first few months of their engagement, the couple continued to live as they always had. Quiet dinners, public events, nights in with Maya's playlist humming low in the background. But everywhere they went, there was a subtle shift in how people looked at them. It wasn't curiosity anymore. It was judgment. At a friend's art gallery opening, an older couple asked Ethan, "Is she your sister or a friend?" When he responded, "She's my fiancée," their faces twitched, the way people smile when they're unsure how to hide discomfort. One afternoon, while shopping for furniture, a store clerk leaned in and asked, with forced cheerfulness, "Would you like our accessibility catalogue?" Maya, used to these moments, responded dryly, "Does that catalogue come with patience and good taste?" The clerk chuckled awkwardly and backed away. But it wasn't always strangers. At a tech conference Ethan helped sponsor, one of his investors pulled him aside during a break. "She's wonderful," the man said, swirling a glass of wine. "But this thing between you and her, I hope you've thought it through. You've got a future to protect." Ethan stared at the man, silent for a long time. Then he smiled, thin and cold. "You know what protects my future," he said. "Marrying someone smarter and stronger than anyone else I've met, including you." The man didn't bring it up again. Back at home, the couple kept a shared journal. Not a diary, just a notebook they'd leave around the house on the counter, the coffee table, Maya's nightstand. They wrote to each other in it. Thoughts, gratitudes, jokes, frustrations. One night, Ethan came across an entry Maya had scribbled in neat, looping cursive. "Today, a woman at the grocery store told me I was so brave for being out." I smiled, nodded, and kept rolling. But in my head, I screamed, "I'm not brave for shopping. I'm just hungry." He added beneath it, "You're brave because you let the world misunderstand you again and again and still show up the next day." Maya rarely cried, but that made her cry. One weekend, Ethan took her to meet an old friend from college, Max, and his wife, Jennifer. The four of them shared a long lunch in the backyard of their country home. Jennifer was warm, asking Maya thoughtful questions about her work and never once glancing at the wheelchair. But after lunch, as they strolled toward the garden, Max leaned in beside Ethan. "She's incredible, man," he said. Ethan smiled. "Yeah, she is." Max hesitated. "You ever think about the long haul? I mean, kids, travel, that kind of life?" Ethan answered, "Every day. And I'll figure it out with her." Max nodded, not fully satisfied, but respectful enough to drop it. Later that night in the car, Maya asked quietly, "What did Max say to you?" Ethan didn't lie. He asked if I'd thought about the long haul. Maya looked out the window, silent for a while. "I think about it too," she said. "Not because I doubt us, but because I know what lies ahead." "It won't be simple." Ethan reached for her hand. "No life worth living is simple." She squeezed back. That was the thing about their relationship. They didn't need to pretend everything was perfect. They just needed it to be honest. As the wedding day drew closer, the judgment reached their own families again. Maya's cousin Lisa called one night after seeing a feature about Ethan in a business magazine. "He's gorgeous, brilliant, and loaded. Are you sure this is love?" she asked, half joking. Maya answered, "If it weren't love, I'd have dropped him the moment he asked if sourdough and rye were the same thing." They both laughed, but under that joke was a real truth. Love is seen by many, but understood by few. Eleanor Monroe, Ethan's mother, kept her distance through most of the engagement. She sent polite replies to wedding updates, commented on the venue photos with lovely, and offered no real objections, but also no support. Until one evening, 3 weeks before the wedding, she invited Maya to tea. Just the two of them. Maya considered saying no, but Ethan said, "If anyone can win her over, it's you. And if she doesn't come around, it's her loss." Maya agreed to go. They met at a quiet tea room downtown. The table was already set when Maya arrived. Eleanor wore a pearl brooch and a navy scarf, sitting straight-backed like a diplomat. "Maya," she said, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, "thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me." They sipped tea, chatted lightly. Then Eleanor said, "I want to understand you better." And for the next 30 minutes, Maya told her about her accident, her work, her dreams, her fears, the chair, the judgments, the quiet pain of proving herself again and again, and how Ethan never once asked her to. When Maya finished, Eleanor was quiet. Then she said softly, "He's never smiled the way he smiles now." Not even as a child. Maya blinked, unsure what to say. "I still don't fully understand your world," Eleanor continued, "but I understand this. He chose you. And I see now why. It wasn't a blessing, but it was a beginning." That night, Maya returned home, wheeled into the living room, and told Ethan everything. He listened, eyes steady, then leaned down and kissed her forehead. "You didn't have to win her," he said. "You already won me." And that, to Maya, was enough. They would face more stares, more assumptions, more awkward questions and veiled concerns. But they would do it together, not because they had something to prove, but because they had nothing to hide. The day arrived wrapped in golden light. It was early spring and the sun filtered through lace curtains in Maya's childhood bedroom. Her mother, Mrs. Brooks, was adjusting the crystal tiara above her daughter's curls, her hands trembling slightly, though she tried to appear composed. "You okay, Mum?" Maya asked softly. "I am now," her mother whispered, stepping back to look at her. Maya sat in her chair, draped in a gown of soft ivory satin, her bouquet resting in her lap. Tiny seed pearls stitched into the bodice shimmered when the light touched them. Her hair had been pinned into soft waves that framed her face with quiet strength. In the mirror, she looked like a bride, not a symbol, not a story, not a headline, just a woman in love. Down the hallway, her father paced. He'd practiced pushing her wheelchair with confidence, but his hand still shook a little. "She's always been independent," he muttered, smiling to himself. "And even now, she's the one leading us through this." Meanwhile, in a different room of the venue, Ethan adjusted his cufflinks. His best friend, Marcus, looked over with a grin. "Man, you've climbed company ladders, spoken at global summits, negotiated million-dollar deals, and yet you're sweating through your collar like it's your first high school dance." Ethan laughed, because this matters more than all of that. The ceremony took place in a sunlit courtyard, surrounded by blooming dogwoods and soft chimes from a nearby church tower. Guests arrived early. Some wore bright colors in honor of Maya's West African heritage. Others came in classic suits and dresses, uncertain of how two cultures would merge, but open to watching. A violin quartet played as Maya entered, wheeled down the aisle by her father, her head held high. The lace from her veil spilled over her shoulders like a quiet river. Every step of that aisle was silent, no whispers, no judgment, just awe. When Ethan saw her, his breath caught. He wasn't thinking about the chair. He was thinking about the moment she first shook his hand at the conference, the way she challenged CEOs with facts and grace, the way she made him laugh with 3 words, "That's not coffee." She was still that woman, and she was about to become his wife. They wrote their own vows. Ethan went first. "I never knew love could be quiet," he began, "until you taught me. You moved the world without moving an inch. And somehow, you moved me. You didn't ask me to carry you. You asked me to walk beside you, and I will for every step, for every slope, for every still moment." Maya took a deep breath. "I spent years wondering if someone would ever see me as more than what I sit in," she said. "Then you came along and never looked down. You never tried to lift me up. You just stood with me. That's all I ever needed. That's all I'll ever ask. And that's what makes this love real." Tears weren't hidden that day. They were welcomed. Even Eleanor Monroe, sitting beside Maya's parents, in a tailored dress and a subtle smile, dabbed at her eyes. After the ceremony, guests flowed into the reception hall. A modern space with traditional elements. Maya had picked herself. Rich golds, deep greens, a nod to her culture, mixed with Ethan's minimalist taste in lighting and layout. The first dance wasn't a waltz. Instead, Ethan wheeled Maya to the center of the floor, knelt beside her, and whispered something only she could hear. She smiled, her hand sliding into his. The music began, soft, deliberate. Ethan stood, cradled her gently in his arms, and swayed with her. It wasn't choreographed. It wasn't perfect. It was intimate. Then, slowly, he helped her to her feet. Whispers fluttered through the room. Maya stood on her own, using Ethan for balance. With practiced movement and quiet courage, she took a step. Then another. They weren't long strides, but they were enough. Gasps turned into tears. But Maya's gaze never left Ethan. Later, when asked why she chose that moment to reveal her ability to stand, she would say, "Because I finally felt safe enough to be seen fully. Not just for what I could do, but for who I was." At dinner, toasts were made. Maya's father spoke about his daughter's stubborn strength. Eleanor Monroe stood next, her voice calm but clear. "I once wondered if Ethan was strong enough for this love," she said. "But today I saw something different. I saw that love isn't about carrying someone. It's about seeing them exactly as they are and choosing them again and again." She raised her glass to Maya. "I understand now why he chose you, and I'm thankful he did." The night ended with laughter, dancing, and the soft clink of champagne glasses. But for Maya and Ethan, the real moment came later, when the guests had gone. The music faded, and the hotel's suite door clicked shut behind them. The room was lit with warm lamps. Rose petals trailed across the floor. Champagne waited on the side table. Maya sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. "Can we talk before anything else?" she asked. Ethan turned to her, sensing the shift in her tone. "Of course." "There's something I haven't told you," she said. "Something I've kept for a long time. Not out of shame, but out of fear." And with that, the night turned once again, not toward endings, but beginnings. The wedding suite was warm and quiet, the world outside muffled by thick walls and heavy curtains. A bottle of champagne chilled in a silver bucket on the side table. The bed, turned down by hotel staff, was covered in soft rose petals. Candlelight flickered gently against the ivory wallpaper. Ethan Monroe sat beside his new wife, still in her wedding gown, her hands folded neatly in her lap. He studied her face, the curve of her lips, the way her brow furrowed slightly when she was nervous. She hadn't said a word since they closed the door behind them. "Maya," he said gently, "is something wrong?" She turned to face him. Her eyes were clear, but her voice came quiet. "There's something I need to tell you, something I've kept from you for a long time." Ethan's expression didn't change. He waited. Maya drew in a long breath. "You know my story. The spinal cord injury. The accident. The doctors told me I'd never walk again. And for years, they were right." He nodded slowly. He'd read every article she'd written about it, heard her speak about it in panel discussions. He thought he knew everything there was to know. "I lived in this chair, I fought in it, I rebuilt myself around it," she continued. "But 2 years ago, before we met, I was offered a place in an experimental neuro-rehab trial." Ethan blinked. "A trial?" She nodded. "It was new, uncertain, and painful. But I took the chance. And slowly, very slowly, I began regaining movement." He leaned forward, now fully focused. "First, a twitch in my toes," she said. "Then I could flex my ankles, then my knees. Eventually I stood. Not long, not steady, but I stood." "Maya," Ethan whispered, barely breathing. "I can walk," she said. "Short distances, not always. Not without pain, and never without effort, but I can." The room fell completely still. The music from the hallway faded. All Ethan could hear was the quiet sound of Maya's breathing. Why didn't you tell me?" he finally asked. Maya looked down at her hands. "Because I needed to know who you were, not the man you show the world." "The man behind the spotlight, the one who sees men not my potential, not my inspirational arc, just me." He reached out, touched her hand. She didn't pull away. "I've had men fall for me the moment they realized I could stand," she said. "Suddenly I wasn't a burden. Suddenly I was getting better, as if my worth depended on walking. I would never—" "I know," she interrupted gently. "That's why I waited. Because with you, I never felt like a condition. I felt like a person." Ethan looked at her and then said softly, "I love you." "I loved you before this moment, and nothing you say or do can change that." Tears welled in Maya's eyes. Not from fear, not from doubt, just release. She took one more breath, then said, "I want to show you." Slowly, she pushed her hands into the mattress and shifted her weight forward. Her legs, hidden beneath the gown, swung gently over the edge of the bed. She reached down, removed her shoes, and planted her feet firmly on the floor. Ethan instinctively rose to support her. "No," she said with a smile. "Let me." He stepped back. Maya's arms trembled as she pressed herself upward. Her knees wobbled and her lips tightened with effort, but inch by inch she rose until she stood tall, just above his chest, the candlelight dancing in her eyes. Ethan stared, not in shock, not in disbelief, but in reverence. She took one step, then another. Her balance was shaky, but her focus never broke. When she reached him, he opened his arms. She walked into them, and he held her not because she was standing, but because she had chosen this moment to share with him. They stood like that for what felt like forever. When Maya's legs finally gave out, Ethan caught her without hesitation and carried her back to the bed with ease. He set her down, knelt beside her, and cupped her face. "You didn't have to prove anything to me," he said. "I know," she whispered, "but I wanted to. Not to impress you, but to trust you." Ethan kissed her hands, one after the other. "Nothing about tonight changes who you are, but it does remind me how lucky I am to walk this life with you." They sat for a while, no rush between them. No need to perform. Later they toasted with champagne, not to her secret, but to their truth. Maya smiled over the rim of her glass. "You always know the right thing to say." Ethan grinned. "No, I just finally learned to say less and feel more." As the night deepened, they lay on the bed, Maya's legs resting across Ethan's lap, her fingers tangled with his. She said, "You know, people always think the hardest part of disability is the physical stuff. The stairs, the pain, but it's not. What is it then?" "Trust," she said simply. "Trusting someone to see all of you and still choose to stay," Ethan nodded. "Then I'm glad I earned it." "You didn't earn it," she replied. "You never asked for it." That's how I knew you were real. Outside, the city buzzed beneath their suite, but inside, there was only stillness. Two people, no longer divided by secrets or uncertainty, just beginning the rest of their lives with honesty, with grace, and with love, grounded in something deeper than words. Tomorrow, there would be press, and questions, and curiosity, but tonight was theirs, and neither of them would ever forget it. A week after the wedding, Maya sat in the sunlit living room of their downtown apartment. Ethan was out at a product launch, and the silence felt like a blessing, a calm space to think, to breathe, to make a decision she had postponed for years. Her wheelchair rested beside her. On the coffee table, her laptop blinked open to a blank video recording screen. She'd done 100 interviews, lectures, even TEDx talks, but this wasn't for an audience in rows or a stage with lights. This was for something smaller and far more intimate. She pressed record. "Hi," she began, her voice steady but soft. "My name is Amala Brooks Monroe. Some of you know me from my work as a disability advocate. Others may have seen our wedding pictures floating online. Either way, thank you for being here." She paused, looked directly at the camera. "There's something I've kept private for a long time, not because I was ashamed, but because I was protecting something I didn't know I could trust the world with. My truth." She took a deep breath. "I was injured at 21. Doctors said I'd never walk again, and for a while that was true. But 2 years ago, I entered a trial experimental neurorehabilitation, and after months of therapy, setbacks, small miracles, I regained partial mobility. Today, I can stand. I can walk, just not far, not fast, and not always." She let the words hang in the air. "I didn't hide it because I wanted to fool anyone. I hid it because I wanted to know who would love me without needing the possibility of change." Her voice trembled, just slightly. "You see, people cheer when I stand. They whisper in awe when I take a few steps. But they miss the real strength, the strength it takes to sit in this chair every single day, to live a life that is worthy and full, even when it's different." She shifted in her seat. "This chair is not a symbol of loss. It's my freedom. It's not my limitation. It's the way I move through the world with grace, with purpose, and without apology." She smiled. "I walked on my wedding night, not to impress my husband, but to show him something I had never shown anyone else, the full truth of me." A long pause. "And he loved me just the same." She looked into the lens, calm and certain. So if you see me in a video one day, walking, don't say I overcame anything. Don't cheer as if I left the chair behind. Because I didn't, and I won't. She closed the video with one line. Don't miss the strength it takes to sit. Then she hit upload. The video began spreading quietly, first among her usual followers, advocates, students, fellow designers, then to bloggers, then to national outlets. Within days, the video had over 3 million views. Headlines rolled in. She stood for the first time, but that's not the real story. Disability advocate challenges what strength really looks like. #sit with power, Amala Brooks, Monroe redefines visibility. Maya didn't do interviews. She didn't explain beyond the video. When a morning show producer called asking for an exclusive, she politely declined. This wasn't a reveal, she said. It was a release. Ethan watched the wave unfold from the background. At one point, his assistant asked, "Should we get ahead of the story?" He replied, "It's not our story to lead. It's hers." That night he brought home takeout and a bouquet of lilies. "They're calling you the new face of honest advocacy," he said with a grin, handing her the flowers. She rolled her eyes. "Let them call what they want. I didn't do this for a hashtag." "No," he said, leaning down to kiss her cheek. "You did it for the girls who don't know they're enough, even before they stand." At a bookstore in Chicago, a mother approached Maya during a lecture weeks later. "My daughter's in a chair," she whispered, teary-eyed. "She watched your video and said, 'Mom, I don't have to be fixed.'" Maya squeezed the woman's hand. She never did. The most unexpected message came in a handwritten letter. It arrived in a soft blue envelope addressed to Maya B. Monroe. Inside was simple lined paper and clean handwriting. "Dear Maya, I used to be a physical therapist. I worked with patients who measured progress only in steps. After watching your video, I realized I never once told them that stillness was just as powerful. Thank you for reminding me." She kept that letter on her desk. One night, scrolling through comments, Maya found a message from a teenage girl in Arkansas. "My school's not accessible. My friends try, but they don't get it. After watching your video, I played it for my entire class." They cried. "I didn't. I already knew what you said was true." But they needed to hear it from someone who stood and sat and chose both. Maya blinked away tears. Then she closed her laptop. She didn't need more clicks or followers or applause. What she needed, what she had always wanted, was already beside her. Ethan Monroe, her husband, her partner, the man who once said quietly, "I will never love your movement more than I love your stillness." And now the world knew it too. It had been 3 weeks since Maya's video went viral. The media storm had quieted. The hashtag still floated on social feeds, but the attention had shifted to the next trending story. Maya was relieved. She never wanted the spotlight. She just wanted the truth out there on her own terms. Life with Ethan settled into a peaceful rhythm again. Mornings were slow. They shared coffee and quiet jokes across the breakfast table. Maya had returned to consulting work and writing. Ethan split his time between the office and home, learning to embrace calm in ways his younger self never imagined. But that peace was interrupted on a rainy Thursday afternoon. There was a knock at the door. Maya had been reading by the window. She looked up, puzzled. Ethan wasn't due home for another hour. She wheeled over and opened it. Standing on the porch, soaked and shivering, was a woman Maya hadn't seen in over 5 years. Her mother, Mrs. Brooks' tired eyes, scarf pulled tightly over her graying hair, a plastic bag clutched in her hand. "Mom," Maya whispered. "May I come in?" her mother asked, her voice barely audible. Maya froze. They hadn't spoken since the argument. The one that ended with Maya shouting, "You can't love me and shame me at the same time," and her mother replying, "I didn't raise you to choose that life." that life. She had meant the wheelchair, but now she was here. Maya opened the door wider. Of course. Mrs. Brooks stepped inside slowly, looking around the home. It was warm and lived in. Framed photos lined the hallway, wedding pictures, travel shots, Maya giving a speech in front of a packed auditorium. I saw the video, her mother said, unprompted. Everyone did. Maya stayed quiet. Mrs. Brooks wiped her hands on her skirt, her voice trembling. I didn't come here for the internet version of you. I came for my daughter. That made Maya flinch. They sat across from each other in the living room, silence stretching between them like a tightrope. I'm sorry, her mother finally said. For what I said before. For what I didn't say after. Maya stared, unsure if she should believe it. I was scared, Mrs. Brooks added, not of your body, of mine. Of how I passed down shame without meaning to. I watched that video, and I saw someone stronger than I ever let myself imagine. Maya's lips parted, then closed again. It wasn't the apology she'd dreamed of, but it was something. Then her mother said, It's your sister. Maya's heart skipped. Lena's been sick. We didn't want to worry you. She was diagnosed a year ago. Stage 4. And now, there's not much time left. The room fell silent. Tears welled in Maya's eyes. She asked for you, her mother continued. Not me, not Dad. You. Maya didn't hesitate. We'll go, tonight. Ethan drove them the next morning. The house Maya grew up in looked smaller than she remembered. The paint had chipped in the corners. The roses her father used to prune every Sunday had long since withered. Inside, it smelled like lemon cleaner and hospital air. Lena lay in the back room, surrounded by soft pillows and quiet machines. Her hair had thinned. Her skin was pale, but when she saw Maya, her eyes lit up. You came, Lena whispered. Maya rolled forward, took her hand. Of course I did. I watched your video, Lena said, voice shaking. Twice. Then again. I wish I'd been braver. Like you. No, Maya said, squeezing her sister's fingers. You don't have to be like me. Just be here, that's more than enough. They sat in that room for hours, talking. Reminiscing. Crying when needed, laughing when possible. Later that night, Ethan brought food and blankets and settled in quietly at Maya's side. He didn't speak much. He just made sure she had what she needed. That Lena had what she needed. That love filled the space where medicine couldn't. Over the next few days, something shifted in the Brooks family home. Mrs. Brooks began joining Maya at Lena's bedside. She brought photos, told old stories. One evening, as Maya wheeled herself into the kitchen, she found her mother washing dishes with quiet focus. Without looking up, Mrs. Brooks said, I'm proud of you, you know. Maya blinked. I don't say it enough, her mother added. I see the woman you became. And I'm sorry I ever made you feel like your power had to be earned by standing. Maya stepped forward, placed a hand on her mother's shoulder. It's never too late to say the right thing. Her mother turned and hugged her, really hugged her for the first time in years. On the final morning, Lena slipped away in her sleep. The house was quiet when it happened. No alarms, no gasps. Just the soft hum of a machine, then stillness. Mrs. Brooks collapsed into Maya's arms. Maya didn't cry right away. She felt everything in waves. Grief. Guilt. Gratitude. But when the sun rose and the light touched Lena's pillow, she whispered, Thank you for waiting for me. At the funeral, Maya spoke briefly. She didn't mention the chair or the past. She spoke about Lena's laugh, her stubbornness, her knack for making pancakes too thin. She spoke about sisters and silence and coming back in time. When the service ended, Maya wheeled outside and found Ethan waiting beside the car. You okay? He asked. No, she said. But I will be. He nodded, opened the door, and helped her inside. As they drove away, the house behind them growing smaller in the rearview mirror, Maya rested her head against the window. She had stood for the world. Now, she had sat beside her sister, one last time. And that, too, was strength. 2 months had passed since Lena's funeral. Grief had a strange rhythm, some days sharp, like a fresh cut, other days dull and slow, like walking through fog. Maya had stopped trying to predict it. She just let it wash over her, and Ethan, as always, was steady beside her. But life, in its quiet insistence, kept moving forward. Spring turned to summer. The garden outside their apartment bloomed with wildflowers Maya hadn't planted. She liked to believe they were gifts from the earth, tiny reminders that something could grow even after loss. One morning, over oatmeal and black coffee, Ethan looked at her across the kitchen table.
"I think it's time," he said. "For what?" Maya asked. "For you to create something that's all yours." She gave him a look.
"I already did. My advocacy work, my consulting." He smiled. "I mean something with your name on the door." Maya raised an eyebrow. "I've been thinking," he continued. "You've spent years helping other organizations, speaking at their events, fixing their buildings, training their staff. What if, instead of being a guest at the table, you build the table?" She stared at him. "A foundation?" he said. "A lab? A think tank? Whatever you want to call it. But it's time the world came to you, not the other way around." That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She sat on the balcony, wrapped in a soft throw blanket, legs tucked up under her. The city buzzed below, muted and distant. The idea Ethan planted grew louder in her mind with every passing hour. Could she really do it? Could she build something lasting, something beyond speaking gigs and guest panels? By morning, the answer felt clear. Yes. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of planning. Ethan offered to fund the first year of operations. "It's an investment," he told her, "not charity." They hired a small team, designers, educators, a project manager who used a cane and reminded Maya of herself 10 years ago. They rented a sunny studio space on the 3rd floor of a former textile factory, now repurposed as a creative hub. Maya named it the Brooks Institute for Inclusive Futures. "I want it to feel like possibility," she told the team at their first meeting. "Not just policy. I want to reimagine public space, education, transportation, everything with access baked in from the start." Their motto became a mantra. "We don't add ramps to the back door. We build a front door everyone can enter." In just 3 months, the Institute launched its first program, an urban redesign initiative, in partnership with 3 major U.S. cities. Maya led the first roundtable herself. City planners, architects, disability advocates, even local students gathered in person and virtually to hear her speak. She sat at the head of the table, microphone in front of her, wearing her signature navy blazer and silver hoop earrings. "I'm not here to inspire you," she began. "I'm here to hold you accountable. Design is not neutral. It either includes or it excludes. So today, we're going to talk about who's missing from your blueprints and how to bring them back in." Ethan watched from the back of the room, heart swelling. This was her in full form, not as a symbol, not as a survivor, but as a leader. Back home, things changed too. They no longer tiptoed around the grief. Maya would still pause sometimes mid-laughter, as if remembering Lena, and Ethan would simply reach for her hand. One night, after a long day at the Institute, Maya curled up beside Ethan on the couch. "I've been thinking about something," she said. "Oh no," he teased. "Last time you said that, we launched a non-profit." She smiled. "This one's smaller." He waited. "I want to try again. Walking," she said. He blinked. "I thought you said you didn't want to put pressure on it." "I don't," she said. "But I want to know what's possible on my own terms, not for a wedding or a speech." Just for me. He nodded, serious now. Whatever you need. They started small. Physical therapy sessions 3 times a week. A new specialist recommended by a friend. Exercises at home, modified yoga. A pair of custom braces ordered with Maya's exact specifications. She didn't tell anyone, not her team, not the media, just Ethan. And week by week, her range grew. A few steps across the kitchen, standing at the mirror while brushing her teeth. A slow walk, hand in hand with Ethan, to the park bench outside their building. One afternoon, she stood in front of the full-length mirror in their bedroom, balancing on her own. She whispered, "Lena, are you watching?" Ethan watched from the doorway, silent. And Maya smiled, because for the first time in her life, she was standing for herself and no one else. Later that night, as they sat on the balcony watching the lights flicker across the skyline, Ethan spoke. "You amaze me." She looked at him sideways. "I've barely walked 4 feet today. That's not what I mean," he said. "You carry grief and hope like they belong in the same hand, and somehow you don't let either weigh you down." Maya leaned into his shoulder. "It's not about being strong," she said. "It's about showing up, even when the weight changes." He kissed her temple. "Then you show up beautifully." Fall arrived with golden leaves and cooler nights, and one evening, as Maya stood to close the curtains in their bedroom, she looked at Ethan and said, "Maybe next year. We talk about starting a family." Ethan's eyes lit up. "Are you sure?" "No," she said with a grin. "But that's the beauty of it. I've learned that beginnings don't wait for certainty. They begin with faith." And somewhere in the corner of their living room, the first printed sign of her institute leaned against the wall. The Brooks Institute, designing the world where no one waits outside the door. The first letter came in a cream envelope. Maya found it tucked between grant applications on her desk at the institute. The handwriting was elegant, the kind reserved for dinner party invitations or formal regrets. She frowned. From Eleanor Monroe. She hadn't heard from Ethan's mother in months, not since the wedding. The note was brief. "Maya, I hope you're well. There are some things we need to discuss. I believe it would be best to talk in person." Respectfully, Eleanor. Maya read it twice, then folded it carefully and slipped it into her planner. That night, after dinner, she showed it to Ethan. He looked at it, sighed quietly, then said, "I'll go with you." But Maya shook her head. "I think I should do this alone." They met at a quiet cafe uptown, where Eleanor always ordered chamomile tea with lemon, no sugar. She wore her usual pearls, her posture straight and chin lifted. The same posture she used during board meetings and family dinners, confident, polite, but never warm. Maya arrived early. She wheeled to the table, parked herself with practiced ease, and waited. Eleanor smiled as she approached. "You look well." "Thank you," Maya replied. "So do you." They exchanged pleasantries, work, weather, the city's new bike lanes. Then Eleanor folded her hands and leaned forward. "I wanted to speak plainly," she said, "without Ethan in the room." Maya nodded. "That's fair." Eleanor took a breath. "You've built something admirable. The Institute, the movement, it's powerful." "And I'll admit, I didn't see it at first. I underestimated you." Maya said nothing. Eleanor continued, "But now you're talking about children. So that's what this was about." Maya stayed quiet. Eleanor's voice softened. "I worry. Not because I doubt your heart or intentions, but because this world is not kind. And I wonder how you'll manage. Physically, logistically." Maya kept her voice calm. "I've spent most of my life managing the unmanageable." "That's not new." "I know," Eleanor said quickly. "But a child is different." Now Maya's tone changed. "A child is a choice. Not a performance, not a test of worth, and we haven't even decided anything yet. But if we do, It won't be because we were trying to prove anything to anyone. Eleanor hesitated. You must understand, I come from a world where children are measured against the legacy they're born into. I come from a world where children are taught that love is enough, Maya replied. A silence passed between them. Heavy, not angry, just full of truths too long unspoken. Then Eleanor said, I worry for Ethan too. I see the way he carries so much. He wants to protect you, always. But sometimes, I wonder if he forgets to protect himself. Maya blinked. I protect him too, she said. We carry each other. Eleanor exhaled. She looked older than Maya remembered, softer too. I've spent so long trying to preserve our family's name, she said. Maybe it's time I learn how to protect something else, like the people who carry it forward. She sipped her tea, then added, if you ever decide to build that family, I'd like to be part of it. In whatever way you'll let me. Maya smiled, slow, cautious, but genuine. Thank you, she said. And this time, when they left, Eleanor hugged her. It wasn't stiff, it wasn't staged, it felt real. Later that night, Maya told Ethan everything. He listened, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. She had no right to put that on you, he finally said. She didn't mean harm, Maya said gently. She meant fear, and fear doesn't excuse things, but it explains them. He reached for her hand. I hate that you have to keep proving yourself to people who should already know. I'm not proving anything anymore, she said. I'm living. The conversation sparked something deeper between them. One evening, over soft jazz and grilled salmon, Maya said, let's talk about it. Kids. Ethan nodded. Let's. They talked about what it would mean, her body, his time, support systems, the house. They laughed about baby names and diaper disasters. They cried a little toot the possibility, the uncertainty, and then they made a decision. Not to decide yet, but to prepare, to learn, to talk to other families like theirs, to consider options, adoption, IVF, caregiving support, and to promise that, whatever path they chose, it would be on their terms. Weeks later, Maya hosted a new podcast series from her institute called Redesigning Family. The first episode opened with her voice, steady and clear. Welcome. Today, we're not talking about what a family looks like. We're talking about what it feels like when love and access share the same space. Listeners poured in. Messages followed. Emails from couples across the country, blended families, disabled parents, same-sex partners, older mums, single dads, thanking her for opening a door few dared to walk through. And in one message, from a woman in Vermont, came this line. You didn't just give me permission to want a child. You gave me permission to believe I could be the kind of mother I never saw growing up. Maya cried when she read that, and Ethan just pulled her close and said, whatever future we build, it already has your voice in it. One day soon, they would take the next step. But for now, they were enough. A woman in a chair who could walk but didn't need to. A man who could protect but didn't need control. A legacy not defined by name, but by grace. And somewhere in the city, Eleanor Monroe clipped out an article about Maya's podcast and placed it in a folder labeled Brooks Monroe, the future we didn't expect but needed. It was a rainy morning in November. Maya sat in the quiet of their kitchen, cradling a warm mug of cinnamon tea. Outside, the city blurred behind streaks on the window. Fall was slipping into winter, and with it came the familiar pull to slow down, reflect. Ethan walked in still in sweatpants, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He kissed her forehead. Sleep okay? She nodded. Just thinking. He pulled out a chair. About? Maya looked at him, her eyes soft. I think I'm ready. He knew what she meant, and he didn't ask, ready for what? He didn't say, are you sure? He just reached across the table, held her hand, and whispered, Then let's do this. They started with appointments, long ones. They met with a reproductive specialist, Dr. Vasquez, who took her time explaining every possible road, every fork along the way. Maya's spinal injury meant a higher-risk pregnancy, but not an impossible one. You'd need strong support, adaptive care, and realistic expectations, the doctor said. But this choice is yours. Maya glanced at Ethan. We know how to build things around support, she said. Still, they didn't rush. They explored other paths to adoption, fostering, surrogacy. Maya made a spreadsheet. Ethan made sandwiches. They took walks, long ones. Maya used her power chair. Ethan walked beside her. They talked about sleepless nights and bottle warmers, about car seats that fit in wheelchairs, about names that sounded strong and kind. And one afternoon, sitting in the park under a tree just beginning to lose its leaves, Ethan said, "What if it doesn't work?" Maya was quiet for a moment. "Then we hold the life we have," she said, "and make space for what's meant to find us." He smiled. "I married a poet." "No," she said. "You married a realist with better metaphors." Then came the email. From a woman named Chloe. Subject line, "We met once, a long time ago." The message was short. "Dear Maya, I don't know if you remember me. You gave a lecture at a college in St. Louis 4 years ago. I was 19. Newly paralyzed, angry, lost. After your talk, I waited in line just to say thank you. You said, you don't have to be okay today. Just promise you'll keep showing up tomorrow. I've kept that promise. And now, I'm a new mum. I'm not in a place to raise this child the way I want to. I'm reaching out because I remembered your eyes. Would you and your husband consider meeting us?" Maya read the message aloud to Ethan. They sat there, stunned, then quiet. Then Ethan whispered, This feels different." Maya replied, "This feels like a rival." 2 weeks later, they flew to St. Louis. Chloe met them at a small community center. She wore an oversized hoodie and held a sleeping newborn wrapped in a handmade quilt. She looked no older than 23. Her hands trembled when she passed the baby into Maya's arms. "I named her Lily," Chloe said softly. "She likes warm skin and music that doesn't have lyrics." Maya held the baby against her chest, the tiny body pressed into her like trust itself. Ethan watched as Maya rocked side to side instinctively, tears silently tracking down her cheek. "I don't want to disappear," Chloe said, "but I know I'm not meant to mother her right now. I just wanted to choose people who'd raise her with purpose." Ethan reached for her shoulder. "Thank you for even thinking of us." Chloe nodded. "You didn't inspire me to stand. You inspired me to stay. And that saved me." 3 months later, the adoption was finalized. Lily Monroe came home to a nursery filled with golden animals, soft rugs, and stacks of bilingual books. Maya kept her power chair beside the crib and added motion sensors so she could be alerted if Lily stirred at night. Ethan installed a ramp to the garden and started learning lullabies on the guitar. They didn't become parents with fireworks. They became parents through stillness, through choice, through love that showed up quietly and stayed. On Lily's first birthday, they hosted a small celebration in the backyard. Close friends. Chloe was there too, holding her own kind of peace. Eleanor Monroe stood near the cake table, bouncing Lily in her arms, while Maya laughed with guests nearby. Later that night, after the guests had gone, Maya and Ethan sat under the stars. Lily had fallen asleep with her hand wrapped around Maya's finger. "She belongs here," Ethan whispered. Maya nodded. "She always did." We just hadn't met her yet. In her next podcast episode, Maya shared the full story. She called it Love Finds Us. She ended it with a simple thought. We didn't grow our daughter in my body, but we grew her in our hearts for a long time without knowing. And when she arrived,
we realized love doesn't need biology. It just needs space and someone to say, yes, you belong here. Somewhere in the city, a girl in a chair listened with tears on her cheeks and whispered to herself, maybe one day, me too. Life doesn't always arrive the way we imagined, but love, courage, and grace can make even the most unexpected story beautiful. The journey of Ethan and Maya reminds us that worth isn't found in appearances, mobility, or approval. It's found in how we show up for one another, in silence, in truth, in the quiet promise of presence. Maya didn't need to be fixed to be loved. She needed to be seen. Ethan didn't love her despite her disability. He loved her with it, as part of her wholeness. Together, they built a life not by fitting into tradition, but by creating their own rhythm through grief, forgiveness, family, and renewal. For older audiences who've lived long enough to know that life rarely follows a straight line, this story is a gentle reminder. It's never too late to rewrite what love looks like or what family can be. And sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is simply stay. Stay present, stay honest, stay open to joy even when it arrives in ways you didn't expect.